Marge. You've been great. Get home safely. Good night. You're still here?
Puss has a whole bunch of those narcissistic traits. He loves that adoration of others, living in the limelight, being able to manipulate a crowd. He feels like he deserves all of this attention. And when you have people constantly saying how great you are, even the best of us with the strongest amount of ego strength, that kind of sinks in and we can start to buy that hype, believe the things that everyone's saying us, and we can think that we're invulnerable. Now, when I state that like Puss has all of these kind of narcissistic traits, like all of us kind of have some set of narcissistic traits. And often when you hear these traits, you'll probably be like, oh wait, that sounds like me. Also, we all have many different traits in us, and just because we carry the traits doesn't mean that we have the full-blown personality of this either. What happens when we've built our entire identity over this false belief that we are invulnerable and nothing can harm us? And then we end up with this really close call that starts to make us question everything that we've believed. That he's not actually invulnerable, that he's not undefeatable, that he has flaws and mistakes. We end up going through this crisis of identity. Something comes out and kind of sideswipes us that we didn't expect could ever happen. It makes us question all of the things that we've built our belief system on. For Puss, who's never really dealt with being vulnerable, it's not one of his strengths, really creates a lot of anxiety in him.
I just love the smell of fear.
Even for us humans, even though we don't have a lot of hair, or at least some people do, but some people don't have as much as a cat does. Some of us don't have as much as a cat does. But we actually do still have the little hairs on our arms and body do stand up on end, which was a way for us to look bigger and tougher to try to scare off foes. And so that's a natural reaction to anxiety that we have. And you can hear his breathing start to go as that epinephrine, adrenaline, flows through his system in order to keep him safe. He's going through that fight or flight response.
Pick it up. Pick it up.
This event ended up changing his sense of competency, his belief in himself. When we change how we feel, what we can cope with and what we can't, it often causes us massive amounts of anxiety. And if that anxiety can build for a long enough time, it actually can also cause us feelings of depression. It alters our belief in what we're able to accomplish and what are going to be our life path or life goals.
What's the matter? Lives flashing before your eyes?
As our sympathetic nervous system prepares us for action, it kind of speeds up. And so sometimes we can go through a blank where we can't think of anything. And sometimes we go through all of these rapid thoughts where it seems like a long time has passed, but it could only be seconds because our brain is using up all that glucose. And it's actually processing all of these images much faster than before. And it's trying to be able to figure out what are the best ways of dealing with the scenario that we have at hand.
I am no longer worthy. I'm sorry.
We do often go through this crisis of identity, and we might change our life path because it was such a painful experience. But the thing is, we are all fallible. We can all make mistakes. That doesn't mean that we have to change who we are. But for Puss, he believes that he should never feel fear. He should never run away, that he should never go through that feeling of vulnerability ever again, that to be able to be this hero, you have to be fearless. But the true thing is that heroes feel fear but go forwards anyways. It's not that they're fearless. Fearless means that you're not understanding of the danger or the risk that's at hand. What you want to remember when you go through that, though, it's not about being knocked down. It's about getting back up. The reason that we fall down is to learn that resilience. That's the real skill, is in being able to fall down and learn to be able to pick up those pieces and start over and do something else. That really is learning. The process of learning has making mistakes in it. It's about being able to deal with failure and be able to continue with something. If we all quit every time things got tough or whenever we failed at something, we'd stop a skill before we actually got good at it. It often hurts our ego so much to be able to fail or do really poorly at something that it takes a lot of strength to be able to pick up those pieces and go through it again, because yeah, we might risk failure again.
Puss in birds!
And we are really associative. So anything that reminds us of a point of a tragedy or a trauma or something bad, and it doesn't have to just be a sound. It could be a sight, it could be a smell, it could be someone, it could be a look of something, it could even be a sentence, could bring back all of those feelings of panic and anxiety. So it's really important to be able to recognize what are those different triggers that cause me feelings of panic or not feeling safe, because you want to actually work through that. Now, that association with different situations is actually really beneficial for us as a species. If you get bitten by a rattlesnake in a very mossy area, the next time you go to a mossy area, it was beneficial for us to remember, oh, maybe there's rattlesnakes here. So our body already presets us to be at a higher level of feelings of anxiety so that we're already closer to be able to go through fight or flight if we happen to need to. So though it's not pleasant, it is really beneficial for us in the long run, because we have 50 to 100,000 year old brains in this modern society. And so because of that, a lot of the things that were adaptive to us then, we still carry on with us, even though they're not as adaptive now. We've gotten rid of most of the dangers and the things that we need to really worry about being associative with. In the short term, though, often we're not going to go through the same scenario ever again. Often now it's better to actually work through those associations. You can do that on your own, though sometimes I would say that that's probably better to go through with a therapist or someone that's trained in it, because it can also cause a lot of fear and anxiety if you're doing it the wrong way. It can actually make things worse. When you feel that feeling of panic, as you get that rush of adrenaline and our sympathetic nervous system goes into that protection measure, remember that having anxiety, it's your body trying to keep you safe, trying to keep you from having something bad happen. And so your heart starts beating faster. Often your breath gets really shallow, and that tunnel sound that you can only focus on one thing is often also very common. Then he just goes through whatever his body says is the safest thing to keep him alive, and he ends up having an anxiety attack. Puss, what's wrong? That often also is really common because our brain, we're going through like this, I'm drowning, I just have to kind of keep myself alive. And you often go through that feeling of tunnel vision. Nothing else is really getting in. So if you're helping someone that's dealing with a panic attack, you want to kind of make eye contact, you want to speak really calmly so that they don't feel alone. But if you're being really aggressive or anxious, it actually can make them feel worse because we're also very associative. We lived in groups, so if one other person is anxious, we say, oh, there is danger, I should be even more anxious. So sometimes when we see someone that's having like an anxiety attack or panic, because we're feeling nervous or worried, we're like acting maybe a little bit more excited or energetic, which can actually make the other person feel even more anxious and less safe because they're like, oh my goodness, someone else is panicking also, so I'm going to panic even more, and you both kind of scaffold your anxiety on top of each other. So remember that your body language when you're dealing with someone that's feeling anxiety or panic is really important. And I love it because Burrito, like, he wants to be a therapy dog, and he does this beautiful thing. Now, again, not everyone likes to be touched when they're feeling an anxiety or panic attack, so don't think that one answer kind of answers them all. He's already read that this is going to be helpful for Puss, and so he just puts his head really softly, and you can tell right away that Puss's heartbeat starts to slow down. Sometimes just a touch or just sitting close to the other person or within that distance that they feel comfortable with. And I would say always read what the other person's body language is. They can tell that they're getting a little anxious, move a little bit further away or try something else. You want to be able to read and listen to what the other person is unconsciously, because they're probably not going to be able to formulate deep thought, pushing away or starting to tense up. That means it's probably a little bit too much or too loud or too much touch, and so give a little bit more space. Altering your breathing, being able to slowly just take deep breaths in and calm yourself down, but also being able to share each other's breathing can be really helpful. And that's where like therapy animals can be really, really beneficial. That sense of touch can be a very helpful tool. And then what you want to do with your breathing is that you want to try to say, slow it down, relax, there is no danger. There isn't a tiger. In this case, it's an actual wolf. So you can't really say there is no tiger because there is actually a wolf, but that I'm safe and I'm okay now. I'm going to make it through. And then when you're doing your breathing, you want to breathe in, hold it for a moment, and then breathe out and relax at the same time. And when you're doing that exhale, you want it to be exhaling out for longer than you breathe in. And if possible, relax your body and then think a happy, calm thought. So by changing your breathing, you're actually letting your body know that you're not running from a tiger anymore, that the danger is past. And so it suppresses the sympathetic nervous system that got us all ready for danger and started to bring on the parasympathetic nervous system that's saying, okay, I can be safe and calm. And it can slow down and lessen the effects of an anxiety or panic attack. Purito just being there, like, it's so good that he's there. He's quiet and he's just being patient with him. He's not trying to rush him. He's not making him feel bad for it. He's not asking him a whole bunch of questions. He's just being that safe person occupying the space with him so that he doesn't feel that he's alone, but also he doesn't feel like he's judged.
Thank you, perrito.
What's going on with you, Puss?
And I like Purito's question. It isn't judgmental. And the way that he said it was really loving and empathic. Our voice tone when someone's going through something traumatic, sometimes we can become harsh or really sharp, and someone else is going to interpret that possibly as judgment or that we did something wrong. And especially if you're more of avoidant, and for Puss, he's invulnerable. He's always been the hero. He's the one that's never felt fear. So you can see that he might feel a lot more judgment for going through this, and that feeling of not being able to control it can make us feel really disempowered. You can feel even worse if someone's reacting really strongly, or you never go through fear. Why did you go through that? Those curt words you want to be really careful about. You yourself want to make sure that you're monitoring your tone, your body language, because we're feeding off of each other. We're very associative. We lived in groups. And so because of that, if you're feeling worried or upset, you might make the other person, especially if they're more on the empathic level, absorb that worry and upset also and feel worse themselves. That fear of judgment is one of those core fears that a lot of us deal with.
Puss in Boots is not supposed to be afraid. That was the first time I ever felt fear. I ran. It was a mistake, Kitty.
It's a really hard thing to give a heartfelt apology, especially when we've made a mistake. You want to make sure to be able to be really honest about it, give it in a very direct manner, and be able to validate and affirm the other person's view. Often we feel so bad, we go straight into defense, or we go straight to, I've said sorry, so now you should feel better, like get on with it. Because we don't want to stay in that feeling of feeling bad because we've hurt someone that we care about. It takes a ton of ego strength to be able to apologize properly, and especially if you are more avoidant, it can be exceptionally unpleasant, especially if you're used to being the one that everyone else looks up to, that usually has the answers or does everything right. To be able to admit even to yourself that you've done something wrong can be a really hard process, but a really strong growth process for yourself to be able to move forward, to understand that we all have flaws, and also to have more empathy when someone else may hurt you or make a mistake themselves.
I find the very idea of 9 lives absurd, and you didn't value any of them.
And I think that that's the the main premise of the entire movie, is that we often don't appreciate the things that are around us. We don't understand, because when you've had all of these good things, you often can take them for granted, that they're just always going to be there. And so we need to really take that time and be able to be affirmative and appreciate all of the wondrous things that we're dealing with now. Often we can live in the past dealing with our regrets, or in the future dealing with our fears and anxieties, but the only thing that we have is the present. That is the gift. And so that mindfulness of being able to appreciate and live just in the moment, one, can greatly reduce feelings of anxiety and depression. And two, it actually makes time seem slower because you're absorbing every moment as it comes.
I've only ever had one life, but sharing it with you and Kitty has made it pretty special. Maybe one life is enough.
We often get stuck in our rituals, our titles, our money, our status. We put all of our investment in that. It's kind of like the movie Dumbo, where he's holding on to this feather and he believes that it's the feather that can make him fly. We put all of this investment, so it's not us that ends up holding the power, it's someone else or something else. And then it actually disempowers us. We can get locked into our habits or our rituals and kind of lose sight of the journey that's in front of us because of it. It's a form of feeling like we can control things, but in the end it actually starts controlling us. We can fall into this so easily because we're kind of pattern oriented. That was really protective to us. Just do the same thing that hasn't wiped us out already is probably a smart idea in, again, 50,000 years ago. But today in modern society, it's actually better, more healthy for us to be able to take risks, to try something new, to be outside of our comfort zone.
You're gonna fight!
Pick it up.
Pick it up!
Okay, I'm gonna have to play this again because there's so many cute parts to this. So what's happening to Puss is that he's going through the same experience. He's going through that anxiety, that fight or flight response, but this time it's different. This time he's going through things that make him have strength, that make him have confidence, that give him courage, the things that matter to him. That imagery can be really effective if you're having a panic attack. The things that make us feel centered and peaceful, they give us back those feelings of control, that everything is going to be okay. One of them is Perito showing his belly. Which is like the cutest little thing that people might have missed. And I'll just say, my saddest moment is that he didn't actually ever rub Perito's belly. I'm just like, that should have happened at some point. Anxiety is not a bad thing. In the case of actually going through when you're gonna have to do something and do it fast, it's actually good to have a certain amount of anxiety. You want to be in that stretch zone. So fighters, before they prepare for battle, they might actually get themselves a little bit hepped up. You don't want to be too calm either. Because remember, anxiety is there to keep us alive. It lets us see faster, it lets us move faster, we're gonna be stronger, we're prepared to think at a much faster rate. So we're gonna make decisions at fractions of a second faster than what we would without having anxiety.
Pick it up. I know I can never defeat you, Lobo, but I will never stop fighting for this life.
I love when he says that because you know he really means it. This is that it doesn't matter about the destination. He's like, no matter what, I'm gonna lose, but I'm gonna give it my all. That's that show of resilience, that he's not even worried about the failure, that he might fail, but he's gonna go down trying, being the best self, that version of him that he wants to be. And I think that that's really the important lesson, is that you don't know what cards you're gonna be dealt. It's not really what cards you get, but how you play the game that really matters.
I came here for an arrogant little legend who thought he was immortal. But I don't see him anymore.
And that's the cool part, is that we can evolve and change. And we want to be able to appreciate that other people can evolve and change also. I think it's really frustrating for people when they've worked really hard on themselves and people still expect them or assume that they're still going to behave in the way that they used to be. But it's a really hard thing also for people to be able to take that risk that someone has actually changed. So I think that it's kind of that walking on the trust bridge together, that you give someone and allow someone that space to be able to take the risk that they might have changed and that you can appreciate it when they have. I think that that's also that space for forgiveness and acceptance, which I think that right now our society has not been really strong on. I think that a lot of times we're so quick to be able to jump on people when they've made a mistake or an error. Sometimes we just do something that we shouldn't have done, or it wasn't with the intent to harm, but someone else feels hurt. We're all kind of trying to do the best we can with the set of tools and techniques that we have inside of our belt. And because of all of the things that we've kind of learned or been bathed in, or tools that we used to use because they were adaptive when we were children that are no longer adaptive, it's not an easy process. So if we can all give everyone a little bit of space to be able to become their best them and not always assume that everyone has malintent, I think that it would go a long way for society. It's like a soapbox, I'm sorry, but I feel that way.
The wish is yours. You deserve someone you can trust.
I don't need it. I've got what I wished for. No magic required.
And that he's able to let go of this thing that he thought that he put all of his eggs in, that this was the thing that was going to bring him happiness and safety. And we're often climbing all of these mountains thinking that, oh, at this mountain, then I'm going to be able to relax and everything's going to be good. But there's always another mountain. There's never enough money, enough stuff, enough things. Sometimes we need to be able to just kind of take a breath and appreciate everything that's around us and know that there's never an end to this journey. There's never a point where we're going to say that everything is good enough until we decide that it's all kind of not on the outside, that superficial, ephemeral stuff that we often hold all this weight to, that society has told us that is really important, but it's all kind of on the inside. That, I think, is the wonderful part of where Puss was able to give up this wish, because it wasn't really going to bring him what he thought it was going to, because he'd already found that on his own. I really love the movie. I hope that you did too. You can let me know what were your favorite Puss moments in the comments below.